Hi. So my name is H. I'm one of the adult librarians here at Baldwin. I'm going to give you a couple words and then hand everything over to Leslie. Just real quick, there are refreshments in the back, and there are also bathrooms just behind me and down the hall. I'm very excited about this program, actually. I can remember going to Jacobson's as a little kid and going to get shoes. And also, Leslie has very generously described this as a shared project between the library and the museum, but you mostly do all of the work, and so I'm very excited whenever she comes in. It looks like I've done a whole lot. We've got a great turnout, but you've done all the work for that, so I'm very excited about this tonight. All right, have a fun time.
Hi, everybody. Well, actually, I did not do all the work for this presentation. I'm going to introduce Donna. She's the one who actually did all the work. But I will say that the museum is looking for opportunities to do more and more programs that we think people will really be excited by. So we've been doing our fall and spring lecture series. They're like 3 per season for a couple of years, and it seems like we're getting to the topics people really love. Like we had one on neighborhoods back in April there were 100 people in this room. We had to pull out, it was amazing. So I guess I'm up here telling you that we're looking for, those topics that we have yet to present, and we might even do an encore presentation of some of the more popular ones. Jacobson's is a topic that everybody loves forever. At least it seems to me. This is a little bit of a different take on it, and I won't tell you too much about it except to say that the images that you're going to see in the slideshow tonight were recently, most of them were recently donated to us by author Bruce Kopitek. Now, there's 2 different flyers up here. They look very similar, but they're actually about different things. So this flyer is for tonight's presentation, but it's also part 2 is that at the museum on Saturday, we're going to have Bruce Kopitek, the author of Jacobson's I Miss It So, at an author signing at the museum. But that's not all. For the price of just the regular admission to the museum, you'll be able to see our Experience Jacobson's display, which recreates aspects of the shopping experience in Jacobson's. Some of the items that you will see there were purchased at Jacobson's. The displays are set up in a way that'll be very reminiscent of Jacobson's. But in addition to that, we have a couple of ways of kind of recording people's stories. You can write them in a book that we have available, which is sitting out on a podium for people to use. And on Saturday, because we expect to have a fair number of people, we will be able to do quick audio tapes of people answering the question, what is your favorite memory of Jacobson's? And just kind of recording that. And that will help not only make Jacobson's real again right now, but it'll help us document some of those emotional moments that people have about Jacobson's. So it's a nerdy museum thing that's going to be a lot of fun too. And just the other flyer, and you can take one on your way out. This is our Throwback Thursdays. This program tonight is the first of 3. This is a brand new program we're doing. It's the kind of like the fun side of history of Birmingham. So tonight is the Fash Bash, and then in July it is Birmingham, America's Shetland pony capital. And it's all about how Shetland ponies were a big deal here. It's very cool, and you might enjoy it a lot. And then the third one is Birmingham at the Movies. That's in August. And Birmingham has shown up in one way or other in television, or it's produced people who have made movies about Birmingham or have been inspired by Birmingham, or just plain grew up here. So that program is going to talk about that. But without further ado, I know you're not here about that. You're really here about Jacobson's. And before I introduce Donna, I need to say that she recently joined the museum staff, and when the Jacobson's theme came up for our current exhibit, she basically took it and ran with it. And a lot of the outcome of her interest and her passion you'll see in tonight's presentation. But I know you share it. In fact, more than one of you came up to chat with us ahead of time, and I just have to ask the lady with the raincoat, if you could please stand up and explain what you have for the audience. So anyway, let's get on with things. The really exciting stuff has yet to happen. As I said, I would like to introduce Donna Casaceli. She's working at the museum as museum assistant. She's done the research for this and put everything together, and she has some great things to tell you. And assisting her is our intern, Julie Lemon, who is our summer intern at the museum. Museum and fashion do attract people of all ages now. So if you know young people who want to, hang out at the museum, we've got things they can do. All right, enough of that. So without further ado now, Donna Casaceli.
Well, thank you, and I actually want to, before I start, send out a thank you to some audience members. Without you, we would not be able to do this Jacobson's exhibit. There are a couple people here who have donated, sort of stepped up when we started this project in January and February, and donated some beautiful items to our museum. And tonight would not be possible without Diane Anderson, thank you very much, and several others here who have dropped off some wonderful things even tonight. Thank you very much. And let's, without further ado, get started. First, I want to tell you that Jacobson's, from the very beginning, when it was opened in 1868 by Abraham Jacobson's, was already fashion forward. Abraham Jacobson's wanted to bring New York fashions to the sparsely populated Michigan area, and he said if women have access to these fashions, they will wear them. And this was back in 1868, and he titled his store Fancy Goods. Jacobson's would only move up from there. Now, Jacobson's would come to Birmingham in 1950 and quickly become a most recognized name. It would actually change the downtown area of Birmingham as they knew it at the time. The main store, which carried the women's fashions right here, was on the corner of Bates and Maple. The second store that would open would be the men's store and then the children's store, and these were located right at Willits and Old Woodward. The children's store probably looks very familiar because it's now the Ethan Allen. They never changed the actual structure. Okay. Now, the Birmingham location would quickly set itself apart from other department stores and become the unofficial flagship store for the brand. This picture is of the famous staircase in Jacobson's and would be featured in many different print ads and articles throughout the years. Here we have three models, and they are dressed in Rodriguez for Peter Clemens. Now, Albino Rodriguez was a designer on 7th Avenue, and the New York Times once described him as having a very soothing way of speaking. They would go on to say, quote, "The clothes he made are soothing too. They aren't the kind that dazzle on the runway or are likely to stop traffic in the streets. A lot of the dresses are based on the shirtwaist, tucked front and all. It's a style that's terribly easy to take." So this was kind of the image that Jacobson's wanted to portray for their women's fashions. But the store really was more than your typical department store at the time. The Birmingham location had specialized shops which offered a wide range of unique items, more than just the terribly easy to take. They had stores like this specialty shop featuring an individual designer, Yves Saint Laurent, at the Rive Gauche Boutique. There would only be a few, one in New York, one in Paris, one in London, and one in Birmingham. Another store that was featured in Jacobson's was Temptuous. And we had a very hard time finding any ads with the actual clothes being sold, because we will find out later, Temptuous sold Mad and Mod for the avant-garde. So their clothing was a little more special, a little more out there, and we'll get to see some of that later. And then finally, they also had the Miss J shop, where young women heading out into the world could find the latest in more mainstream fashions. So we can see some of the clothes that Miss J would offer in 1969. You gotta love the pants, I'm telling you. Now, Jacobson's was actually best known for being a leader in women's fashion, not just in Michigan, but nationally. Vogue readers were no stranger to Jacobson's, and the full-page Jake adverts featuring famous designers helped bring the Birmingham store to the national stage. So even though Birmingham was located in Michigan, and Jacobson's hadn't quite yet ventured out of Michigan, they were still taking out ads in Vogue magazine. So they were a national leader in fashion. Now this one is a beautiful dress. It's called Checks and Flounces, and it was designed by Shannon Rogers for Jerry Silverman. Shannon Rogers was known for being a very classy, chic, and fairly affordable designer. Mr. Rogers would actually start out designing for Hollywood movies such as Vogue's of 1938, Marie Antoinette, and the 1934 version of Cleopatra, starring Claudette Colbert. So he quite knew his way around fashion before he even opened his house. They would go on to open the Shannon Rogers and Jerry Silverman School of Fashion Design and Merchandising at Kent State University. So if any of you are looking for a fashion design degree, this would be the place to go. This next one, called American Lifestyle, was created by Belle Saunders for Abe Schrader. Belle Saunders was actually the head designer at the 7th Avenue Company in New York, and this designer was known for their ready-to-wear upscale clothing. This is actually model Shelley Hack. She was a quite famous supermodel. I see a couple heads nodding. In the 1970s and 1980s. She would actually do quite a few ads for Jacobson's. Our next one here in Vogue magazine from 1972 is called A Flip of Flounce. And this was a sweater dress by Nate Kaplan. Now, Nate Kaplan was a designer, but he passed away long before the 60s, and it ended up becoming a family company out of New York, and the company was known for the hand-finished touches on its clothing. Because most of the hems and seams were hand-finished, these clothing and accessories were very expensive. These were meant for women with a very large or unlimited clothing budget. This was not something that you would go into just any department store to purchase. Now this one is called the Copper Plaid Blouson Blouse by Anne Klein. Blouson is just a very fancy word to say a very blousy item. Anything that had a tight waist that would allow the fabric above the top to become very blousy or very flowy was called blouson. Anne Klein was an award-winning designer, and she would actually be the one that would create the category of Junior Miss. So if you've ever shopped at any Junior Miss store or Junior Miss department, you can thank Anne Klein. She would help launch the careers of many other designers like Chuck Howard and Donna Karan. By the 1960s, famous designers knew that Birmingham was a must-stop on the fashion circuit. Designers from New York and California would come to the Birmingham Jacobsons to showcase their latest fashions and have their clothing photographed throughout the city. Now, this photograph was taken on the famous staircase in the Birmingham Jacobsons, the same staircase we saw earlier. And this dress was actually designed by Paul Schnell for the Los Angeles-based design house Ernst Strauss. This dress was described by the Birmingham eccentric as pleats kicked way back into vogue. So after the 60s were over, we're going to kind of see a little bit of 70s in here also. Pleats and longer skirts would come back into vogue. Now, just a side note, this staircase was so famous that many others tried to emulate the staircase by having a spiral put into their own store. There was actually a store in Birmingham called Davidson's that was right down the road from Jacobson's. They tried very hard to be Jacobson's. They did not have the staying power, but it was quite interesting because the interns and I were going through all the old Birmingham eccentrics, and every month we'd see the Jacobson's ad, and the next month we'd see the Davidson's ad. And guess what the Davidson's ad looked like? It looked exactly like the month before Jacobson ad. So they were they were really trying a little too hard. But it just goes to show you how much Jacobson's was looked up to even by other stores in Birmingham. Now, when designers came to Birmingham, it was big news. And the Birmingham Eccentric interviewed many of the designers and published photos of the trending designs. We're very fortunate to be able to have quite a few of the black and white photos that were taken throughout Birmingham. Now, one of the most famous designers to visit Birmingham was Calvin Klein. His reception was quite the affair, as many women came to see him as well as his clothing line. Now, the eccentric stated that Calvin Klein was tall, sleek, and handsome. And these are the Birmingham's words, not mine. Swarms of ladies gaga'd and goo-gooed at him and his clothes. So, now, Calvin Klein would actually become very well known in the 80s and 90s for his more explicit underwear ads. I'm sure we remember some of these ads. But in the early 70s, when he was designing for stores like Jacobson's, his clothing was designed a little bit more for sophisticated yet stylish women. Here we have a Jacobson's ad for the CK brand in Vogue magazine, and this is a tweed jacket in 100% wool with a beautiful Donegal tweed pant. You can't really see the tweed, but a very classy look. Now, this is another Calvin Klein, and when he was asked who can wear his clothing, Calvin Klein said, "She really doesn't have an age. A lot of different age groups can wear them." Now, this is probably one of my most favorite photos that I found in our archives because, if we look here, she's standing on the rooftop in Birmingham. So here's the trees, here's the rooftop, and here's another rooftop. So this was on the top of a store in Birmingham. Now, this is a very dramatic effect for the photograph, but it truly sets off this simple yet stunning design in a black matte jersey. So, as you can see, I mean, I just love this photo because what a brave woman. You would not get me up there, especially in heels. Now, another famous designer that would come through was Teal Triana, and he was the 7th Avenue, New York house. He was probably not as handsome as Calvin Klein, but he still created an uproar because his designs for women were a must-have item. Now, he was not a designer himself, but he came from a long line of designers. Both his father and his uncle were couture designers from Italy. So when he opened his own 7th Avenue shop, he knew what he wanted. He liked the classic look and stated, "You cannot be too revolutionary or you frighten women." Teal Triana also wanted his clothing to be comfortable to wear. He said, "Designers can become impractical. You can allow them their freedom, but you need to remember practicality." And in this photograph, which was taken in our Birmingham store, was titled "Focus on Fabrics," and Triana emphasized fabric as a key to fashion innovation. So they're two separate dresses using the same fabric. Now this next one is called Drama in Sequins and Sable. And he would use sequined material trimmed in sable fur. This was also taken in the Birmingham Jacobson's, and it is, I think, one of the more beautiful dresses that we have a photograph of. Now, Teal Triana felt that fashion was cyclical, that if you look back over time, you can see that it had all been done before, And that innovation now was taking these classic cuts and creating something new with the fabrics and combinations. So a lot less designing something new, but more innovating what had been before, was Teal Triana's mantra. Now, Pat Sandler. If you think of 1960s fashions, you have to think of Pat Sandler. He would bring brief, buoyant, and bouncy to Jacobson's. And in 1967, he would have a trunk show in Birmingham. He created such designs as the pop tent, the parasol, and the blade. These three designs were featured in the Birmingham Eccentric, and the first dress is a ribbed cotton in coin dot in black and white. Now the second dress, you have to stop and think about this one, and I'll give you a chance to do it. It was a silk chiffon in fireball yellow. Now I want you to think really hard of the most yellow of yellow that you can think of. Now add 10 to that. It came really, we had to look it up, like what is fireball yellow? If you've ever driven in Michigan and passed a construction site and saw those yellow construction jackets, that's about where we're going with this fireball yellow. So it was very 60s. There was no doubt about it. It is, of course, trimmed in ostrich feathers, and that's what gives it that parasol look. And then the last one is a sehab tunic in a white blended twill. And it had side slits to show the lace lamb chop legs. For us common folk, lamb chop legs are just shorts. So, just a pair of shorts. Now, Pat Sandler would mainly focus on the dresses, but here we have a Vogue magazine Jacobson's ad from 1970. And this outfit was made of a golden honey crushed velvet. And when it was worn for evening wear, it would look more like a long skirt. As you can see, if she wasn't standing if she were standing with her legs closer together, it would be more skirt-like. Now they paired this with a matching sequin top and emphasized with a belted bow at the waist. Now, golden honey sounds very soft, but the truth is that it was quite orange. So we have to remember this is 60s going into 70s. The colors were very bright, very bold, and with the crushed velvet and the sequins would have definitely set this model apart. Now, Chuck Howard was another designer from New York, and he had a very interesting start in the fashion business. He actually was a tail gunner in World War II for the Navy Air Corps, and he would use his GI Bill to study fashion in Paris. He would work with Anne Klein, and he would give Donna Karen her start when he would introduce her to Anne Klein. When speaking on women's fashions during a visit to Birmingham, Chuck Howard believed that, quote, women should never be dictated to. They should be the ones demanding the styles. This dress is titled Sleek, and it is of simple designs. It's just a plain silk jacket and skirt in leopard print silk, but it is cut on the bias to give extra movement. Now, Chuck Howard also stated, my main thought is a woman should be comfortable. He would design clothing with comfort in mind, but he also designed sleepwear, as we can see here in the Birmingham Jacobson's ad. However, his sleepwear was not very conducive to my sleep because just the small gown was $40. This is back in 1967. So his ready-made line was fairly expensive, but Chuck Howard designed for Vogue patterns, which gave women on a budget an option to make their own clothes for less. Now, this is a 1969 pattern for a dress that could be purchased at a shop like Jacobson's, or it could be made at home. Jacobson's actually had a fabric store along with many of their other specialty stores. So you could go to Jacobson's, you could buy the pattern, you could buy the fabric in the latest fabric styles, of course, because it was Jacobson's, and you could have a Chuck Howard of your own for a lot less money. Now, this is a more fascinating designer. This is Stephen Burrows. And he would exhibit at Jacobson's. Though he did not personally visit himself, he would send his personal assistant, Chris Levine. Chris Levine would tell us that Stephen Burrows was somebody that they had been looking for, someone who understands soft, feminine, young, and bright. Stephen Burrows would actually be the very first African-American designer who developed a mainstream high fashion clientele. And he would be welcomed into Jacobson's, and Jacobson's would proudly carry his line. Burrows was known for his bright colors and curly edges, known as the lettuce leaf, or the lettuce edges. This first dress is titled Float. And this used layered fabric and the lettuce edges to create a soft and feminine image. Now, Stephen Burrows started at Philadelphia Museum College of Art to become an art teacher, but he actually fell in love with fashion instead. Burrows believed, as Chris Levine stated in the Birmingham Eccentric, he wants her to look like a picture, and he thinks that a woman should look like a woman. This dress, titled Dazzler for Evening, is a beautiful red studded with rhinestones. We again see that soft layering and the lettuce edging. Chris Levine said he has this idea that you are getting a piece of art, and he sees his clothing as artistic creation. We can see his idea of art and clothing with this jersey jumpsuit with a sheer covering floating in chiffon. The chiffon, of course, is edged in his signature lettuce ruffle again. All of these photos, by the way, were taken throughout Birmingham, and this outfit is kind of a lime green with a lime green and white chiffon over. Now, Burrows has actually continued designing. He is still alive and designing today. Through the 70s, he would create Academy Award-winning dresses. He would create Cosmo covers for Brooke Shields, and he has been worn by Barbra Streisand, Cher, the Supremes, Bette Midler, Jerry Hall, and First Lady Michelle Obama. Now, this last of the Stephen Burrows photographs is this soft white wool coat, and it is trimmed with his familiar zigzag stitch. It is the zigzag stitch on chiffon that creates that lettuce edge. So even though it's not creating a lettuce edge on the coat, it's still that signature zigzag stitch. Adele Simpson. Now, I love this picture. She actually started as a child actor in vaudeville. And she would actually work with such greats as Milton Berle. She would go on to design clothes for over 50 years, 5 decades, and she would create several outfits for several of the first ladies, including Lady Bird Johnson, Pat Nixon, and Barbara Bush. This picture was from the Birmingham Eccentric. Unfortunately, I don't have much more information on this photograph. Nothing was attached to the back. Sometimes we get tons of information and sometimes we get none at all. One of our quests was to find this in the newspaper, but we never did find it. We do know that it's an Adele Simpson because that's all that's written on the back. But Adele Simpson would design for over 50 years. And she would be responsible for treating cotton as a serious fabric. She worked to bring cotton out of the kitchen, her own quote. And when she was only in her 20s, she was reputed to be the highest paid designer of all time. So here's a Vogue magazine ad for 1971. How do I wear this? Let me count the ways. We all agree that at the museum we want this outfit because the skirt is not only reversible, but it's detachable, making it into just a cute little shorts outfit. You can wear it with or without the vest, with or without the skirt. Everything's reversible, and so you have several different outfits in one. Quite the innovation. You would probably only need one outfit for the whole week. But she's also selling the ad, as you can see, a perfume bottle. That is her signature perfume scent, which was also carried at Jacobson's, because of course Jacobson's had a perfume counter. And this last one by Adele Simpson, also a Vogue magazine, is called Black and White of Night. And it was also described as absolutely femme fatale and bare of back. It is of a black matte jersey halter decorated with rhinestones. And then the skirt is, of course, cotton, a cotton piqué. So it would be a beautiful textured pattern on that cotton, and nice and light and easy moving. All right, so Yves Saint Laurent. You cannot talk about fashion in the United States or Paris without Yves Saint Laurent. He was based in Paris, but he would be a top influencer along with Givenchy in the fashion world for several decades. Yves Saint Laurent had specialty boutiques, like I said earlier, in Paris, London, New York, and Birmingham. And he was known for outfitting women, particularly in the early years, in blazers and smoking jackets. And he would actually introduce attire like the pea coat to the runways. He began his career under Christian Dior and found acclaim for his dress designs while there. Now, there's an interesting side note. Yves Saint Laurent was actually from Algeria. And in 1960, he was called back to his country to fight for Algeria's independence. He had always been a sickly child and a sickly adult. So when he showed up in Algeria, the government was basically, yeah, you can go back home. So he went back to Christian Dior, and Dior refused to let him have his position back. Now, there were many sympathizers for Laurent. They felt Dior was being very unfair and would support him in his lawsuit, and he would win against Dior for 48,000 francs. And that is one of the reasons why he was able to open his own house. Now, here is one of his dresses. The question is asked, can every woman wear the fantasy designs of Yves Saint Laurent? And Jacobson says yes. This is a peasant-style blouse made of gold-trimmed black chiffon, with a matching black cotton skirt. Again, thanks to Adele Simpson, we start seeing cotton in the higher upscale fashions. Now, Hubert de Givenchy, sorry, I'm taking French lessons over the last week trying to get all these names, also had a house in Paris and was known as haute couture. Now, there is a difference about haute couture in the 1960s and 70s than today. You kind of hear people flippantly saying, oh, well, I saw this haute couture outfit or this haute couture outfit, or I'm going to buy one. But they don't really understand what haute couture is. It is the highest quality. Haute couture means high sewing in French, which means that it was made to measure, and it was designed to a client's specific requirements. So you can't buy haute couture off the rack. Vogue once described it as walking pieces of art. So Givenchy's house was known as haute couture, and he specialized in French luxury fashion. He would actually be responsible for some of the biggest designs, known as the Bettina blouse, the baby doll dress, and the sack dress, or also known as the shirt dress. He would bring these to the runway, and in 1977 we can see the khaki city shorts. The cuff is above the knee and it is worn with a matching jacket. So he would bring certainly fashion that would not be expected to the runway, like a pair of shorts. Our next one is the Halston Holiday Collection. Halston, also known as Roy Halston, but his professional name was just Halston, was another designer featured here in Birmingham. He gained fame when he designed the hat worn by Jacqueline Kennedy at her husband's inauguration and was once dubbed by Newsweek the premier fashion designer of all America. His clothing was considered simple and minimalist, but sophisticated, glamorous, and comfortable. The dresses that Halston designed were supposed to not need any accessories. You should be able to throw the dress on and walk out the door. If we look at this sequin gown, which was done up in emerald green, you can kind of see how she can get away without a single accoutrement to her body besides the dress. And yes, this is Jacobson's freight elevator, another dramatic effect, throwing this gorgeous, gorgeous dress on a working elevator. This is also from the same holiday collection, and this dress was the white jersey dress, and it was created for elegance and comfort. Again, no accessories. Whereas the one model was on the freight elevator, this dress has the model twirling on the main floor of the women's department here in Birmingham. All right, and you can all thank Elizabeth Stewart for your bathing suits in November. I know when I walk into the store in November and I see bathing suits, it's kind of sad because I'm not going off for a holiday. But Elizabeth Stewart designs would showcase at Jacobson's in the winter because, as David Stewart says, when we go someplace that has a cold, severe winter, we find that people are already prompted to get away. Now, Jacobson's would eventually open a store in Florida for their snowbirds, providing the fashions curated in Florida for the Florida store. This would, as a side note, set the Jacobson's Florida store apart. Many of the department stores in Florida would order all of their clothing from New York fashion houses. Jacobson's Florida would order all of their fashions from Florida fashion houses. So you had a much better fit. It was another way that Jacobson's was able to cater to their clientele. So if you wanted winter wear, you shopped in Michigan. If you wanted summer wear, you shopped in Florida. All right, now to Tres Temptuous. This store was the place to shop if you wanted the absolute latest in young avant-garde fashion. The designs and styles at Tres Temptuous were cutting edge, and the service was specialized for each client. Again, it's a mad and mod world here. When a woman shopped at Tres Temptuous, she could actually have a personal model in her size try the clothing on for her while she sipped champagne in a lounge that was decorated with a true 60s flair. Now, this is one of the reasons why Tres Temptuous did not show a lot of clothing in their ads. They showed a lot of pictures of chairs and lamps and interesting things because you had to go to Tres Temptuous to see the clothing. There was another reason why there was only one ad that we could find. The designers that were at Tres Temptuous. One of the designers was Rudy Gernreich, and he was considered the most innovative and dynamic designer at the time. He was constantly pushing the boundaries of fashion. He was unconventional and at times controversial. He is most famous for his monokini. His monokini was a topless style unisex bathing suit. So it would fit both men and women, and there was no top to it. I know. When I say topless, very European, yes. Now, this December 67 cover of Time magazine was one of the very few safe photos that I could find of him. He loved his clear plastics. If you notice, these dresses are cut out clear vinyl. Okay? And he had very interesting cuts in many of his dresses. And he felt, and the reason why his fashion was displayed this way is he felt that people would not truly be free until the naked human body was no longer a shameful thing. So I'm sure Birmingham eccentric was very happy that Trey's did not show more of their clothes in the ads. Now we do have one example of a dress. This is called the Cross Your Heart dress. And the original dress sold for $80 in the ad. It's right here. It's very tiny, but it sold for $80. Today, when we were just trying to find some examples, we actually found the actual dress at a vintage site. A dress like this will now set you back about $2,000. So if any of you shopped at Trey's and you have clothes in your closet, run and look. They may be worth a fortune now. But in an exhibit on his work at the Cincinnati Art Museum, Rudy is quoted as saying, "To me, the only respect you can give to a woman is to make her a human being, a totally emancipated woman who is totally free." Now, this would be the probably most far out avant-garde part of Jacobson's. And now we're going to kind of move back into a more mainstream, the Miss J shop. Now, the Miss J shop catered to older teens and young adults. And this shop carried less designer names, more Jacobson's names. But the modern styles of Jacobson's were both affordable and very fashionable. Miss J had the perfect outfit for a senior in high school, and in 1969, this ad says, "Miss J upstages the class scene in cutaway jumpers by Bryant." I think some of these fashions could still fly today, honestly. Now, they also carried prom dresses in some of the most sought-after fabrics of the time. This is a romantic regal white lace with a beautiful empire waist. Somebody did tell me when they were going through my presentation, it says it looks like somebody saw the movie Pride and Prejudice and took the fashion straight from there. But since Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite movies, I'll take it. You could actually purchase a prom dress at the Miss J shop for as little as $32. So we're going from very expensive clothing to affordable, well-made Jacobson's label clothing. Now, Miss J also designed entire wardrobes for the college student headed out on her own. This was an 8-page insert from 17 magazine, and it is dedicated to a different school in Michigan. So let's hear it for Albion College. Anyone for Albion? All right, show of hands. Anyone Eastern? Woo! How about Michigan State? And then we have Western Michigan University. And then there's also Wayne State. We have University of Detroit, Central Michigan, and of course U of M, all about the shoes, all about the shoes. If we're talking about Jacobson's, we cannot forget Jacobson's Bridal. Jacobson's Bridal would hold every spring a fashion show with the latest styles from designers like Priscilla of Boston, Galena, and Bridal Couture. This is a beautiful white English net touched with Cluny lace. And as the Birmingham eccentric said in '78, this is a look that is fresh and uncontrived. You could purchase everything from bridal gowns to bridesmaids' dresses and even flower girl outfits. The best part about buying a dress from Jacobson's is a representative would go to your wedding and help you get dressed. So that was a great, great benefit. And if you had one of those dresses, especially when it went into the 80s and 90s with the long, long Princess Diana trains, well, they would come to your venue where your reception was and they would tie it up for you. So you didn't have to worry about 3 or 4 bridesmaids underneath your dress trying to pull all the strings, because the representative they would send over knew exactly how to put up your dress. So one of the very special touches there. All right. Now, this here is a, so this is a Christian Dior hat. Jacobson's did have several more specialty shops for your shopping needs. If we went into every store, we would be here till midnight. And I'm sure some of us would love it, because I could talk to you all day about all the different shops, the furs, the needle points, the fabrics. But we're going to move on to accessories. Now, once a woman found her perfect outfit, she would have to accessorize and to dress it up. Jacobson's would provide hats, scarves, shoes, and purses for everyone. And this is just an example of one of the hats sold at Jacobson's. This is an ad from 1967, and it's a Christian Dior Muguet Bouquet. It is for Easter, with lilies of the valley nestled amongst fresh, bright green leaves. So you weren't just wearing your Easter basket, or you weren't just carrying your Easter basket, you were wearing your Easter basket. But tonight we have actually brought some accessories from our collection, so we're going to get to see some of these accessories. So Julie right now is going to hold up our Importuna hat. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of work out the legs.
Sit. Oh, wrong way. Ah. There we go. You'll all get to come up and see these after questions, so we're going to lay them out so you can see them. This is an Importuna hat, which was made of black wool and accented with a gross-grained ribbon and bow. This is the same hat, brand and style, that Princess Diana wore. She would wear it in the 1990s, and I have been looking for the picture. I have not found the picture yet, but there is a picture of Princess Diana wearing this hat. Our next hat is an Adolfo. And Adolfo hats were prized worldwide. Adolfo would design more than just hats, also dresses and clothing. But he was most famous for hats because he was also one of Princess Diana's favorite designers. Now, both of these hats were donated by Diane Anderson of Birmingham just recently, so we're very excited to have them here with us tonight. Now, scarves were also a must-have accessory for the well-dressed woman. And Jacobson's was happy to help those who were also scarf-tied challenged. So they would produce this brochure on how to tie a scarf and offered it for shoppers looking to enhance their wardrobe. If you are also scarf tying challenged, you'll have to come down to the Jacobson's Experience at the Birmingham Museum because we have a scarf tying station where you can take one of these brochures with you after practicing on some of our scarves. We also have here a lovely 100% silk scarf by Oscar de la Renta. Now, if purses are your passion, Jacobson's did not disappoint. Here we see an ad for a lizard cocktail bag. So nothing says happy holidays like a lizard. And this was just in time for 1966. Now, if lizard was a bit much for you, we also have some lovely purses here to show you from Jacobson's. We have a Nicholas Reich for Jacobson's. So this was sold exclusively at Jacobson's. This is a beautiful ultra suede in a classic design from the 1960s. But honestly, you could carry this today and look just as well dressed. It is a gorgeous classic design. The next purse we have, we could see with a Temptuous outfit. It is a vinyl purse with leaves and gold thread embedded in the vinyl. In doing a little bit of research on this purse, we found that they have come back in style. Young ladies are buying these off of eBay and Etsy like mad. So if you want one, you can still pick one up. And I am sure that this would go with just about any avant-garde that you have today. Now, finally, we have a pair of shoes. I know, U of M again. But these were actually in our Miss J ad for the universities. So, and on the inside, you can see that it has a Miss J ad or Miss J tag right inside. These are of calfskin in a beautiful deep red with a buckle and bow on the tie. And as you can see, revved up colors, sassy snub toes, flying little heels, just made for shortened skirts. So these would have been a beautiful accessory. Again, both the purses and the pair of shoes were recently donated by Diane Anderson. So we can't thank her enough for all the wonderful things on our table. So now Jacobson's continues to be a leader in fashion. It would continue through the 80s to advertise in Vogue and other national magazines. They would expand into Ohio, Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, and Kansas. Eventually, Jacobson's would close the doors forever in 2002. Again, we could go into that topic for hours, but if you want to know more, come to the museum. I'll talk to you all about it. Jacobson's will always and forever be with us, however, in our hearts and in the very landscape of Birmingham itself. Jacobson's created in 1950 the Birmingham downtown shopping district. All you have to do is walk downtown and look at all the shops, and it's easy to see how Jacobson's shaped the Birmingham that we have today. We have some of the largest collection of high scale, upper scale shops today. So here's another shot of Birmingham. So now what we'll do is we'll open things up to questions, and afterwards you are all more than welcome to come see our accessories up front. So any questions? Yes? How long is the exhibit going to be at the museum? Till at least the end of this year, so through December. Yes. Why did they close? There were some economic factors going on in the 90s that would bring about new competitors. Stores like Target would move in, cheaper prices, and so there's a lot of different economic factors that would go into why Jacobson's would close. Yes? The very first Birmingham Jacobson store was in Reed City, Michigan. So, if you look at Michigan, right about here. So very sparsely populated, but he really did believe that if a woman is given access to New York fashions, a woman will wear New York fashions. Everybody wants to look beautiful. Jacobson would own it until the 1930s when it would be, right, and kept the name.
We have so many clothes now that are made in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Did Jacobson's ever sell them?
Did Jacobson's ever sell clothing from other countries? Not really. From what I can gather, Jacobson's, when they sold their name brand, they would actually inspect everything coming in to make sure it was well made. That is another reason, probably in the 90s, after they kicked out the CEO, the son of the owner of Jacobson's, they would start bringing in cheaper clothing from other countries that were not up to Jacobson's standards. So that would be another little notch in the fall of Jacobson's. But during its heyday, they would purchase from Paris, they would purchase from London, they would purchase from those places, but no, the clothes would be mostly made in the United States. Any other questions? Yes.
Museum still looking for pieces?
Yeah. Is the museum still looking for pieces? Yes, yes, always yes. Jacobson's was a very large part of Birmingham. It created downtown Birmingham as we know it. So yes, we are always looking for pieces because we want to be able to keep Birmingham. That's our job. Our job is to keep Birmingham history.
There's something to donate. Who would we call and contact?
You can contact the museum. All the information's on the flyers, or you could just stop in and visit us. We love visitors. Yes.
What set the Birmingham store apart from the other stores?
What set the Birmingham store apart from others? It would be the upscale clientele. Birmingham had a very wealthy base. We had the car company CEOs. We had very upper middle class and upper class families living in Birmingham. They wanted a place to shop. Grosse Pointe would also have that, but Jacobson's in Birmingham was also newer, larger. We had more area to expand, so it just became the premier store. I have room for time for one more question. Yes.
I didn't have a question,
Oh.
but I worked at Jacobson's for 11 years
Yeah.
on call, and it was a wonderful family store. And the ladies' store, they had a little restaurant, and we used to have lunch there while you were on a break or lunch hour. But it was a wonderful family store, and I really enjoyed working there. And then it started changing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You should come and sign our book.
I will.
So speaking of restaurants, Jacobson's in Birmingham would not have a restaurant like the other Jacobson's until a little bit later when they opened a cafe. But thanks to Bruce Kovatek, we are sending all of you home tonight with a Jacobson's recipe from the cafe, the quiche Lorraine. And if you stop at Jacobson's this Saturday, we will have the cheese soup and the garden salad sandwich for you to finish up your collection. So I want to thank you all tonight. Thank you so much. Don't forget that we are going to have Bruce Kovatek this Saturday, and you can come talk to me about your experiences and your memories. I'll be there to take them down. And you're welcome to come and look at some of our artifacts that we now have in the museum. Thank you, everyone.